So I am not a musician. I am a creative kid from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And I always felt a little out of place because I wanted to act and write, well, I did write poetry. You know, I just had this creative soul that yearned for a mentor. But I didn't have one, so I went to law school. There were times when I was struggling with this creative urge and this need to make money, and it seems like at these times is when a musician would enter my life. The first time was walking home from kindergarten when my crush Bobby told me that he had a band, and he was 6, so I never heard them play. And then when I was in law school, my first love told me that he had played music, but we were both stuck in law school, and I said, you know, I'd always wanted to be an actor. But it was those conversations that gave me the courage to eventually start taking acting classes and eventually move to New York City to pursue my dreams. And the next musician actually was a music manager, and that was when I started writing lyrics. And one of the lyrics was, when I was 27, I wrote, is it too late to dream when it already seems that so much has passed you by? 27, it's like, oh, it's too late for me now. And this was when I had moved to New York. And once again, struggling with how do I make art and make a living? It was 1994, and I was getting on the train at Christopher Street subway stop to go downtown to get out of jury duty. And I was sitting on one of the benches, and like just about 1 or 2 seats away from me was a man who was clearly a musician. He was wearing all black. He had a black leather vest. He had a goatee and long hair and dark glasses underground. And I was enamored by him, even though, you know, we were both just waiting for the train. But I was like, that's like clearly a creative human being right there. And as they do, the train actually rushed by, and this time it didn't stop, which happens sometimes. And the musician spoke. He said, "Why did it do that?" And I wanted to cheer him up. This was my chance. I said, well, you know, sometimes the trains do that. They don't stop, but that means there'll be another train coming before you know it. And that seemed to make him feel a little better. Sure enough, another train came, and we got on the train together, and we sat next to each other. And he told me about his life as a magician. Why do I keep saying magician? It's almost like musicians are magicians, right? I think it's not an accident. I think they are. I think it's a magical thing to do, and I don't play, like I said, but I'm just so inspired, and I guess just even being here makes me feel that same inspiration. So we started to talk, and he tells me about how he and his brothers had in the 1970s had a Saturday morning show called the Hudson Brothers. And his name was Mark Hudson. And he wrote for Ozzy Osbourne, and he produced for Ringo Starr, and he just, you know, he was a Grammy Award winning, he wrote Living on the Edge for Aerosmith. And I'm just going to get out of jury duty. And I've met this creative, magical guy that lives in Los Angeles. And like, this is maybe the first time I've really met a true creative person who lives the dream that I had always dreamed to live. And we get to the subway, we get to our stop, we're getting off at the same stop. Now he is going downtown to the Rangers parade because the Rangers had won the Stanley Cup that year. So it was mobbed. There were people everywhere, and he was so sweet. He took my hand and he walked me to the courthouse so I could go get out of jury duty and he could go celebrate with the rest of New York City. And we exchanged numbers, and we started to talk on the phone almost every single night. It was just like, it felt like this relationship, long distance relationship, but it was very inspiring. And he told me about what it was like to be a creative person and how, even though it was very glamorous, it was still a lot of hard work. And he would tell me even ideas he had for songs. And then there was one night he was telling me about this spider being on the wall, and then the Ozzy Osbourne album came out, and there was a song called "The Ghost Behind My Eyes," and there was a line that said, "The spider's dancing on the wall," and I was like, "Was that the same spider that you told me about on the phone? Is that the same spider?" And he's like, "Yes," and the song was called "The Ghost Behind My Eyes," and I'm like, "Was that about me? Am I the ghost behind your eyes?" And he said, "Yes," and I was like, "Oh my God," I mean, I'm a muse, and he's my inspiration, my mentor, and it was just this amazing creative drive, and part of that creative conversation was a bit of innuendo. So I would say something like, I went to the refrigerator and I got some food, and he said, "Oh, so when you went to the refrigerator, did you come to the refrigerator? And how did it feel? Did you slide into the refrigerator? And did it feel really, and there was so much innuendo." And, I'm pretty much ready to go with that. I got so worked up. And so every night we would have these intimate phone sex experiences. And I got pretty worked up, as one does when you can't have what you want. The teasing does have a pretty profound effect. And he lived in LA and I was in New York, and we were having these conversations every day, but he would visit New York occasionally, and we would just go to lunch. But finally I practically begged him. I'm like, can we actually go in a quiet room together, just the two of us, and actually, maybe like have a real life, connection thing experience? So he invited me to come to his hotel room in Midtown Manhattan. And I go to the door, I knock on the door, and he answers, and he's wearing these little, almost like running shorts, which I was like, okay, that's maybe the way they do it in LA. I mean, it was cute, but it was a little, and it was awkward, because suddenly he's there, and I have what I want, but it's awkward, and oh gosh, I can't even believe I'm saying all this. Okay. It's too late now. I can't run off the stage, can I? Okay. So anyway, so some things happened, and I don't know if this is a thing in Hollywood, but there was it was almost like he had this little plastic finger condom thing on his finger that was vibrating. And I don't know if that's a thing, maybe here, but it was interesting. It was something. It was awkward. And then I did what I could do to help him feel his thing. And he said that he came. And maybe I looked away and missed it. He said that it was so powerful that it flew over my head and hit the wall and ran down. And I didn't notice that. But I choose to believe that because I want to be successful in my pursuit of these things. And then I left. The phone sex sort of, fantasy is sometimes better left fantasy perhaps than reality. And so we sort of, as one does with long distance, we sort of leave it off. And there was another album that he released with his brothers, a Hudson brother remake with a new song. And the new song had lyrics to the effect of, "Everything is upside down. I'm in the air, you're on the ground. Indecision tells no lies. You don't like you, and why should I?" And I asked him, is that kind of about me? And he said something charming and nice. But as I said, the phone calls sort of dwindled after that. I think we both accomplished what we were out for. And I was inspired, and as I am, by all musicians. And it's been a little bit past 27 in 1994, but I still remember that same lesson. It's not too late to dream when it already seems that so much has passed you by. Thank you.